It's over, it's done. I don't have to talk about this game anymore. This is probably the last video I'm gonna make about it. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League finally has ended support. After this game released back in February of 2024, people were not particularly looking forward to the game after it was announced that the game was going to be a live service, and it did kind of alright when it first launched, being able to rack up as much as 13,459 all-time peak players on Steam, but unfortunately dropped significantly as time had gone on. But then again, people didn't stick around playing the game because the game wasn't particularly good, and in fact took a beating, not just in the Metacritic, but in the user reviews. Because at the end of the day, people didn't want a third-person live service shooter when it came to Rocksteady. No, they wanted another Batman game, and Batman games have usually just been single-player, very story-intensive titles. So for us to be able to get a game like this, which is multiplayer focused, live service that keeps constantly changing with additional seasons of characters, it just really was not a particularly appetizing thing for Batman fans, since the best Batman games that we got, specifically Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, these were all single player games. So with them moving kind of away from all of that and adding seasonal content, well, let's see what additional characters we did end up seeing with this game. So we got Joker, or rather Jonkler, I want to call it, like this dollar store version of Joker. Then we got the season of Freeze with Mrs. Freeze for some reason. Okay. Then we got the season of Lawless with Deadshot's daughter Zoe Lawton. I'm gonna be completely honest. No one cares about Mrs. Freeze. No one cares about Zoe Lawton, aka Deadshot's daughter. No one, and the Joker that they did bring in looks nothing like the Joker that we know and love. There's a reason why people call him the Jonkler for a reason, or dollar store version of Joker, depending on how you want to look at him. And then finally, we get a cool looking character that everyone bloody knows. We finally get a character like Deathstroke, which, by the way, Deathstroke was actually data mined from the game somewhere around the end of season 2, I want to say. So we knew that he was coming at some point, we just didn't know exactly when. However, despite the fact that the game's no longer going to be receiving any additional updates or upgrades or whatever have you, there is at least some light at the end of the tunnel. Firstly, that WB doesn't have to keep shoveling money into a fire anymore, which is this game, because even though there has been a slight uptick in the number of players actually playing the game, that uptick was only due to the fact that people bought the game at $3. So the price of the game dropped from $70 to $3 on Steam. And that's why we get a bit of an increased bump around, if I just kind of increase the that's why we get a bit of an increase up here, but otherwise it would largely have been dead for the most part. And I mean, like, if we really like extrapolate from here, it's just going down, and that slight increase just means absolutely nothing for its numbers. But one slight bit of positivity I think that I can bring to this game, if nothing else, is something that should have been there from launch, but the developers never bothered to put in. There is actually going to be an offline mode, as promised. The end has finally come. Rocksteady announced that Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League's 4th season will be its last, which includes Deathstroke, by the way. The good news for those who want to keep playing is that the online functionality will continue, and the long-awaited offline mode is finally here, despite being promised at launch. And that little bit that I'm adding in at the end is very important to sort of keep in mind. Deathstroke joining the roster, the Suicide Squad's crusade against Brainiac is drawing to an end. Rocksteady wrote, Season 4 will finish up with Episode 8 and which scheduled to release in January 2025, and this will serve as the last seasonal episode for Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. So we're expecting it to drop in January of 2025, and support for this game didn't even last a full year. Rather, the announcement now really put into perspective, it lasted just little over 10 months. So we're looking at about 10 months and 10 days? No, 10 months and 8 days, yeah, pretty much. With that being said, however, just to kind of keep in mind what kind of story we were looking at, was that there was going to be clones of characters that we know that are taking forms of different Brainiacs, and then you have to fight different Brainiacs based on the enemies that you've beaten and saved and then lost and then beaten again. So it's just a sort of irreparable amount of doing the same fights over and over again for seasonal content that didn't make any sense. Especially when the season of Joker dropped. When Joker dropped, people could pay extra money to unlock Joker immediately, or play through the battle pass that required you to go up like 55 levels or something like that. Like, that was just absolutely insane and not a way of being able to do it. Instead, you could just pay $10 and you would unlock Joker right away. And that's not how you do seasonal content, especially when you're introducing additional characters. You should just give players the ability to play them, especially if they've paid more money for your game, which, if I remember correctly, I think this game also had like early access as well, potentially, though I can't quite remember, so we can kind of squeeze that one off the record. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the game's no longer going to be supported. Online functionality is coming. It has had a myriad of issues of people just not liking the game, not enjoying the game, getting a pretty much a stabbing of the gut due to user reviews and critical reception. The numbers just do not look good from Steam's perspective, so I feel like we can kind of extrapolate from that and actually guess what the numbers look like on the console side. And ultimately, the characters that were introduced were just god awful and nobody really wanted to play them. But when we finally do get a character that we want, it's already too little too late. The game is dead, and ultimately is just going to be a third-person shooter that people are going to play that ultimately just involves you popping zits on enemies. But that is what I have to say about the situation. Let me know what you guys think about all of that in the comments below. Like the video if you like to, subscribe to the channel. I'm aiming for 500 subs by the end of next year. With all that being said, I do upload every day, so I'll see you guys tomorrow.